Would you please pray with me? Lord, we thank you for all the ways you work in our lives. We especially give you thanks for your faithfulness when we say yes to your call. Amen. Please be seated. Unfortunately, we all know that bad things happen, tragedies occur, natural disasters pop up, and they're so unpredictable. But can you imagine having your whole life turned upside down and then coming to the realization that your best hope and answer to prayer may just be a bunch of unskilled teenagers? We just got back from our second year of serving in Rockport, Texas, on the coast near Corpus Christi. You may remember 2 years ago, Category 4 Hurricane Harvey made landfall there, and then it stalled out over South Texas, and it dropped an entire year's worth of rain in just 1 week. Great progress has been made in Rockport over the last 2 years, but there are still plenty of folks who continue to struggle to get back on their feet, and we were blessed to meet a few of them. All 89 of our missionaries have spent time over the last few months preparing our hearts to serve, and then we sent 2 separate teams over a 2-week period down to partner with Team Effort and work in Rockport. And Team 2 came down and swooped in and picked up right where Team 1 left off, which was wonderful. Between both teams, we served 5 different homeowners. Mr. Nelson is a very private man. We didn't get to talk to him very much, but we know he is generous. He opened up his home to another man in town that he didn't know who had reached out to the local church looking for a place to stay. And since Mr. Nelson's shed had been lost in the storm, and his house is not very large, trying to find room for his belongings and that of his new roommate were proving quite difficult. So he was thrilled, they both were thrilled. With the shed, we were able to build them, and they were pretty amazed that a bunch of teenagers did it, and so was I. We did a good job on that. Mr. and Mrs. Specht, Mr. Specht had recently started using an electric wheelchair, and when we got there, he had not been able to leave his home for 3 weeks after his release from the hospital. And I will tell you, this ramp was the most ambitious building project I've ever seen in all my years of youth mission. This thing is massive. The picture doesn't even do it justice. Our team was even able to get it done in time for Mr. Specht's doctor's appointment, which he was very much wanting to get out of the house for, and he and his wife are just thrilled to have some of their independence back. Mr. Diaz has lived in his home for all of his 65 years. He's there on the end on the far right. He's lived there for 65 years, and he is also incredibly generous. He has opened up his home to at least 3 tenants that we know of, and they have turned the entire front of the house into a makeshift bedroom. And I will just say, we learned that sheetrocking a ceiling is not easy. We did a lot of sheetrock repair there, and Mr. Diaz and one of his roommates also are using a walker, and a wheelchair is probably not far off. So the ramp we were able to build them is making accessing the house so much easier for both of them. Miss Sharon has lived in her mobile home. She's right there in the middle in the white on top. She's lived in her mobile home for 10 years, and when she returned after evacuating for the storm, she found that almost all her belongings had been damaged by the water. Our team also did lots of drywall repair there for Miss Sharon, and they put handrails on the stairs and the deck there that you see to make things safer for her. And they were also able to load up and haul off the very last pile of debris from Hurricane Harvey. And Miss Sharon could not have been more thrilled. Miss Ellie, sweet Miss Ellie. Miss Ellie may have served us more than we served her. We were supposed to paint the outside of her house, which we did, but she grabbed a paintbrush and came outside to paint with us. She also brought treats out to our team, and one of our adult leaders had a birthday while we were there, and she even got her a little gift. So it was a blessing to be blessed by Miss Ellie for sure. You can probably tell that relationships are key for us, and we were blessed beyond measure to have time to go back and visit Mr. Richard and Miss Mary. This is the couple that both of our groups served last year, and right before we were there last year, Miss Mary had been given a dire prognosis for her terminal cancer and was not expected to make it through the year. And she, thanks be to God, has received quite the miracle. Her cancer is not gone, but it has shrunk to the level that they are beginning to be a little more hopeful about the future. And we joked that it's not often that you can compliment a woman for gaining 60 pounds and then be happy about it, but she's thrilled. And you can see the before and after picture, and she is doing well, and it was a blessing to get to visit with them and to give them a love offering as well and keep that relationship going. They are a sweet, sweet couple. We know that the people we serve need as much love as their homes do, and it is our joy to be able to be that vehicle of God's love to them. We partner with Team Effort every year because they plan our lodging and our food, they organize our work projects, and they even lead chapel services for us, which allows us as leaders to really be with our students, and that is such a huge blessing. The work we do is important, and it blesses folks, but the reason we do it is even more important. And so for months before the mission, we spend time in focused Bible study, and then we continue to focus on Scripture while we're in Rockport. And this year, the chapel theme that Team Effort presented was called Running the Race, and it's based on Hebrews chapter 12, verses 1 and 2, which was one of our readings today. We focused on this part. Let us also lay aside every weight and sin which clings so closely, and let us run with endurance the race set before us. Another translation says, let's throw off extra baggage, get rid of the sin that trips us up, and fix our eyes on Jesus. We have probably all come to understand that this race we are running, this race laid out before us of living a life of faith, is much more of a marathon than it is a sprint. Sometimes the wind is at our backs, and it's easy to make progress toward our goal of reaching the finish line and hearing God say, well done, good and faithful servant. But other times, we can feel like we're standing still, barely making progress, or sometimes even falling backward. The weight of life can become so heavy that the idea of running the race well seems impossible. I often pass by people running or walking in my neighborhood, and some of them are running like they don't know that running's hard, and they're not a care in the world, the wind is in their hair, and they're running at a steady pace, and they're going to reach that goal. And then every once in a while, I see somebody else who's walking wearing such a heavy backpack that they have to carry walking sticks. And I'm sure they're training to climb a mountain or something cool, but it's very clear to me that they aren't going to reach their goal anytime soon. And more than that, they look miserable. They're not enjoying the journey at all. The weight is just too much. We spent some time on mission talking about where all this weight comes from. Sometimes the weight we carry can come from broken relationships. Guilt over our own mistakes or unforgiveness of the mistakes of others can weigh us down. Asking for forgiveness or extending forgiveness, even when we don't feel like it, can help us lessen the weight that we carry. I'm sure at different times we can all think of weight that comes from broken relationships. Sometimes the weight we carry comes from hard life circumstances. We often have no control over a scary diagnosis or the loss of a loved one or a natural disaster. When our focus is on the difficulties in front of us, it's as if we can have blinders on, and we can't even see the parts of our life that are still good. Cultivating gratitude in our life, even in the midst of hard circumstances, can help us lighten that load. Miss Sharon, one of our homeowners, modeled that so well for us. She was able to share with our team that there were parts of her that were even thankful for the storm. They forced her to get rid of things that she didn't need. And as she watched that last load get hauled away, she was overjoyed, and the weight was palpably removed from her. Sometimes the weight we carry comes from where we find our identity. We may try to be who we think others want us to be, who society says is best, who we wish we were, and all the while ignoring what God says about who we actually are. One team effort staffer shared about some time he spent growing up in foster care. He had tried to put on this big, bad, tough persona, and he made some bad choices. And he shared about meeting a woman at a summer lunch program for kids who get free and reduced lunch during the school year, kind of like the ones that we participate in here. And she shared with him what God thought about him, even knowing all the things he'd done wrong. And as he closed out his talk, he led us in singing a song called Who You Say I Am. And I could see the weight lifted from him as this grown man, who once felt unwanted in foster care, sang with all his heart, I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I am a child of God. Yes, I am. Our weight comes from so many places, and this passage reminds us to lighten our load so that we can run the race set before us. We experience freedom when we lay down the weight that was never ours to carry. This passage also tells us how to do it. To fix our eyes on Jesus. He had a pretty hard race to run too, and we can follow his lead. I like how the Message translation puts it. We'd better get on with it. Strip down, start running, and never quit. No extra spiritual fat, no parasitic sins. Keep your eyes on Jesus, who both began and finished this race we are in. Study how he did it, because he never lost sight of where he was headed. That exhilarating finish in and with God. He could put up with anything along the way. Saying yes to God's call and following Jesus are the first steps in running this race well. I want to let the George family come up and share how this mission experience has impacted the way they are running their race. We have Nathan and Elijah and Emily and Brianne George. And Nathan, how long, are you on?
Yes, I'm on.
Okay. How long has your family been here at St. Philip's?
So we found St. Philip's in January of this year. So it's been, just 7 months
So you've
now.
been here forever.
Yeah.
And what made you consider coming on this mission?
So for us, we're a military family. And Brianne just retired last year. And so this has given us an opportunity for the first time to actually lay down roots and really, find a family. We've been so blessed and so thankful, in this short time for, everybody here at St. Philip's. And so we saw the mission trip as an opportunity not only to, meet and get to know the people here, our family here, but also as a way to serve, others in the community in need, and an opportunity also to do it as a family. So we just thought it was a great opportunity.
We're so glad you did. So Elijah, how has this experience impacted you personally and you guys as a family?
So going down to Rockport and seeing everything that had happened after Harvey, the fact that there's still damage that still needs to be repaired, and even after all the work that we've done down there, the fact that there are people willing to still help even after all this time, it kind of puts hope in my eyes that if something were to happen here, people would be willing, whether it be my immediate family or my St. Philip's family, that God has placed those people in my lives where they'd be able to help.
Emily, what surprised you most about this experience?
Well, I think what surprised me most was the fact that you guys actually trusted us enough to actually build these like intricate and complicated things.
Only
like the
because
giant
Mr.
ramp.
John was right there.
Yep.
But you guys did a great job. It's hard work, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. It was a lot of like days in the heat, but the thing with the one with the gigantic ramp, it had a ton of shade, so we were actually like blessed that we had all that.
It was good to be able to see that in the mix of working so hard.
Mhm.
Brianne, how did you see God at work during this experience?
So I had some challenges before we left on the mission, and I had to lay my baggage down starting out because I am a little bit of a control freak and don't like to be told what I can and can't do. And when you're told you can't lift heavy things, can't do a lot of hammering, and you're going on a mission trip, that kind of limits you. But what that was God moving in my life and showing me that he was in control and gave me a chance to go into this with an open heart and open eyes. And I saw some amazing things. So one of the big ones is Mr. John Miner with his big servant's heart is just fantastic on the work site. And he takes time not just to get the work done, but to also teach the kids how to do it right. So they're learning skills for their lifetime, and they're learning to serve. And we just heard during the mission celebration that is now pouring outside of our mission, where Katie and some of the other youth are going to continue to serve here in the Frisco area. So even just this morning, I felt God moving just with that. And then throughout the rest of our time on the trip, because I couldn't do many things, I was kind of a gopher, going to Walmart for things. And there were always kids willing to jump and go, not just because they were going to Walmart, but because they were looking for projects and ways to serve in other ways. And we had people come up to us throughout the mission and ask us where we were from, about our mission. We even had one woman who came up to us and thanked us for what we had done in her life, and we weren't even the church that had helped her. So you knew that God was still moving throughout the community of Rockport, and it was really great to be a part of that.
And just so you know, don't be mad. Mr. John is 74 and probably the hardest worker on our team. And Miss Brianne had some physical limitations. Words are hard today. Limitability. And they'd only been here for a short amount of time. And every night in chapel, we would share worksite stories, and sometimes we would give shout outs to people who we really saw God working through. And many of us, leaders have been doing this for over a decade, and nobody mentioned us. Every single person was, well, I saw God in Miss Brianne, and I saw God. So if you're new, if you're of differing abilities, if you are afraid you might not fit in, you will. Would encourage you to jump on in, because I know you guys have been blessed, and we've been blessed to have you serve as a family. And for the rest of you, I would ask that you keep in mind that this race we are running is not an individual sport. It is a team sport, and we are so thankful to be on the team with you. The prayers and financial resources, the support you have given us, the time you give us to be able to come back and share is invaluable. And so we want to thank you for your part in saying yes to what God called you to do so that we could do our part. So thank you very much for being on the team with us. We hope that you will be inspired to lay down some of the weight you might be carrying so that you can better run the race that God has laid before you.